to your Dream Coach podcast. I'm Shayla Wey. I'm a small business coach, growth strategist, and believer that your dream life starts the moment you lead like you mean it. This podcast is built around three core pillars: leadership, fulfillment, and growth. Because what I have found is that when you build from these three areas, you don't just grow your business, you grow yourself. Now, if you've been leading a team, managing people, or even just managing yourself lately, and it's felt like a bit of a challenge, this episode is definitely for you. So today I'm talking about The 1 Minute Manager. It's a short but powerful book by Ken Blanchard and Spencer Johnson that completely changed the way I look at leadership. And it's one of those books that seems deceptively simple, but if you really apply what it teaches, it transforms how you lead, how you coach, and how you connect with your team. And honestly, I've been reminded lately, especially because so many of my coaching clients, whether they're running multi-million-dollar companies or managing small teams, are often facing the same challenges: communication gaps, accountability issues, and even those motivation dips. And so what I've learned is that so much of that can be solved by mastering the principles in this book. So today I'm breaking down the 3 key lessons from the 1 Minute Manager, sharing what I found in my own leadership journey and connecting them to the deeper fulfillment and growth that come from when you lead. And so before we dive in, don't forget you can join the LFG Business Academy on School for free. Inside, you'll find powerful resources and community conversations just to help you lead, grow, and find fulfillment in business and life. And you also get access to my mini leadership series, a free video training to help you grow your influence and impact without burning out. And the link is in the show notes, so you can go check it out. But let's jump into these 3 core things. So I've learned, and what I found in leadership is often overcomplicated, and leadership doesn't have to feel that way. It doesn't have to feel complicated. I remember thinking we used to have long meetings, or I had to have endless strategies, or just really managing everything in detail. The 1 Minute Manager taught me, and it reminds us that leadership is really about people. And people thrive when they feel seen, supported, and are clear about what's expected. So in the book, Ken Blanchard shares 3 incredibly simple but transformative principles. First one being 1-minute goals. Second, 1-minute praisings. And the third one, 1-minute reprimands, or as I like to say, realignment conversations. These 3 things sound small, but they are powerful, because when you lead intentionally in these 3 areas, you create clarity, motivation, and accountability. And that's what every team needs more of. So I want to break this down. So what I have found over and over again in coaching business owners is that most performance problems are often clarity problems. So the power of 1-minute goals is clarity is leadership. If people aren't doing what you expect, it's not because they usually don't care. It's often because they don't know what's expected. So the 1-minute goal is about setting clear, concise, and measurable goals together. This is key, right? Doing it together. So it's not a long planning session or a formal document. It's a quick, clear agreement. So what's the goal? Why does it matter? What does success look like? And how will we both know it's achieved? Right? Sometimes just less is more. So how could those 4 questions shape and transform your connection with your team, right? As a leader. So when you do this, something powerful happens. Is accountability becomes a shared commitment, not a top-down demand. It's leadership that empowers instead of micromanages. And that's where fulfillment comes in, because people want to know why and how they're winning. So when you lead with clarity, you give people the confidence to execute, and you create the space for real growth to happen. Now, the second principle might be my favorite. And honestly, it's the one I've seen most leaders forget. And that is the power of 1-minute praisings. Recognition creates results. 1-minute praisings are all about catching people doing something right and acknowledging it in the moment. And what I have learned is that we tend to wait until the big milestones or performance reviews to recognize people, but that's often too late. People don't just need to know when they've messed up. They need to know when they've done well. And I always used to say to the leaders that I coached years ago is that what we recognize gets repeated. And I say this to clients to this day. It just looks a little different in the businesses and the leadership roles that they have. But when you recognize progress in real time, even in small ways, you reinforce the behaviors that drive success. And even more importantly, you create connection, because praise isn't about ego, it's about energy. And so when your team feels seen and valued, they bring more of their best self to the table. They'll start to take ownership, they'll get innovative, they'll care more. And here's the kicker. This applies to you too. When's the last time you gave yourself a 1-minute praise? Because fulfillment doesn't come from waiting for someone else to validate you. It comes from acknowledging the good that you're already doing. So the leaders who thrive long-term are the ones who can celebrate the wins without losing hunger for what's next. Now let's talk about the hard one, the 1-minute reprimand. In today's language, I'd probably call it a 1-minute realignment, because the power of these 1-minute realignments is that it allows us, especially as leaders, is to just be able to give feedback that helps people grow. So this isn't about punishment, because what I've learned is that most leaders avoid either conflict completely or they overcorrect emotionally when frustration builds, and neither works. The power of the 1-minute reprimand is that it's direct but compassionate. So you address the issue quickly, clearly, and respectfully. So you separate the behavior from the person. Okay. So you remind them that you value who you are, but the action needs to change. And then you move on. And that last part is key. No grudges, no emotional residue, because leadership isn't about being right. It's about doing what's right for the relationship and the result. And so when you lead this way, you create that psychological safety where people can make mistakes, they can learn, and they can grow. And that's how you build loyalty, you build that trust and that lasting culture. Now, you might be thinking, Shayla, this book came out decades ago. Why does this still matter? Because leadership hasn't changed. People haven't changed that much. We still want to be seen. We still need clarity. We still need recognition. And we still grow best with feedback and trust. So I have found that even in today's fast-paced, remote, digital business world, these lessons are timeless. If you can master these 3 things, clear goals, consistent praise, and constructive feedback, you will outperform 90% of leaders out there, because most don't do these things. Not because they don't want to, but because they forget that leadership is built in the moments, not the meetings. It's those daily conversations, not the quarterly reviews, that shape culture. So let's have this back to the 3 pillars that drive this podcast: leadership, fulfillment, and growth. Leadership is about clarity and communication. That's the foundation of 1-minute goals. Fulfillment comes from appreciation and purpose, what 1-minute praisings give both you and your team. And growth happens through feedback and alignment, exactly what those 1-minute realignments create when they're done well. So when you practice these consistently, you lead differently. You stop managing tasks and you start developing people. You start to create a culture that's both accountable and human. And that's the kind of leadership that doesn't just build businesses, it builds legacies. So if you take anything from today's episode, let it be this: leadership doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be consistent. A minute of clarity, a minute of praise, a minute of realignment. That's all it takes to build trust, connection, and performance in your team and in yourself. Because leadership isn't about managing people. It's about empowering them. And the more you lead with clarity, care, and courage, the more fulfilled and effective you become. So if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to invite you to join the LFG Business Academy on School. It's completely free, and it's where we go deeper into conversations like this one about leadership, mindset, and growth. So come and join that community. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If this episode inspired you, share with a fellow leader or business owner who's ready to grow with more clarity and connection. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me on Instagram at Shayla Wey Coaching. I love hearing how these conversations are helping you grow. And remember, because your dream life starts with the way you lead, the way you live, and the way you grow. I'll see you next time on your Dream Coach podcast.